The slave markets of Station 7 were the largest in the Outer Rim. Every day, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds passed through its halls. Some came to buy, some came to sell, and some came in chains, their freedom stripped away, their futures sold to the highest bidder. The station itself was ugly, metal walls covered in rust and old blood, flickering lights that buzzed like dying insects. The air smelled of fear and sweat and something worse. Guards walked the corridors with weapons ready, watching the cages with bored eyes. They had seen too much suffering to care anymore. Walked through the main hall like he owned the place. In many ways, he did. The captain was known throughout the sector as a man who took what he wanted and killed anyone who stood in his way. His ship, the Blackened Claw, had raided dozens of colonies. His crew had murdered hundreds, and his collection of slaves was famous among those who traded in living beings. Was tall for his species. His skin was dark green and covered in small scales that caught the light when he moved. His eyes were yellow with black slits for pupils, and his mouth was full of teeth that were made for tearing flesh. 4 arms hung from his shoulders, each one ending in clawed fingers that had ended many lives. Behind him walked his first officer, was a species known for their size and strength. He stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms of his own and skin like stone. Most beings ran when they saw coming. Those who didn't usually died. The auctioneer hurried toward them. He was a small creature with too many eyes and not enough spine. His hands shook as he bowed low before the captain. "Captain, welcome, welcome. We have many fine specimens today, workers from the mining colonies, servants from the pleasure worlds, even a few fighters for the pits." Waved a hand. "Show me something interesting. I am tired of the usual stock." The auctioneer's many eyes blinked nervously. "There is one thing, something unusual. We captured it from a ship near the Outer Rim, but I must warn you, Captain. The warnings on this one are." "Show me." They walked to the far corner of the auction house, past rows of cages filled with broken spirits. Some of the slaves looked up as they passed. Most did not. Hope had died in their eyes long ago. The cage in the corner was different. It was reinforced with extra bars and surrounded by warning signs in a dozen languages. 2 guards stood watch, their weapons pointed at the small figure inside. Looked into the cage and laughed. Inside sat a young woman. She was small, smaller than most species in the galaxy. Her hair was dark and dirty, hanging around a face that was pale and thin. She wore torn clothes that had once been some kind of uniform. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her eyes were closed as if she was sleeping. "This," said, "this is what requires extra guards and warning signs." The auctioneer stepped back. "Captain, please, read the scanner report." Pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the cage. The device hummed for a moment, then displayed its results. Species human. Origin Earth Sol System. Threat classification Apex. Warning Earthborn, do not engage. Recommended action, avoid direct confrontation. Notify authorities. Maintain minimum 50-meter distance. Read the warning twice. Then he laughed again, louder this time. "Do not engage, this little thing," he turned to. "The humans have been in space for barely 200 years. They are children in this galaxy, soft, weak. I have heard they die from simple temperature changes." Shifted his weight. "Captain, the Galactic Council does not issue such warnings without reason." "The Council fears competition," snapped. "The humans breed fast and spread faster. The Council wants to slow them down by making everyone afraid." He pressed his face close to the cage bars. "Look at her. She weighs nothing. She has no claws, no scales, no natural weapons of any kind. What could she possibly do to harm me?" The woman opened her eyes. Felt something strange in that moment, a cold feeling in his stomach that he had not felt in many years. The woman's eyes were brown and ordinary, but the way she looked at him was not ordinary at all. She looked at him the way he looked at prey. She studied his armor, his stance, his body. She memorized everything about him in a single glance. Then she smiled. "How much?" she asked. The auctioneer wrung his hands. "Captain, I really must advise against this purchase. Our policy regarding Earthborn specimens is very clear. We are supposed to hand them over to the authorities. The risk is simply too great." "How much?" The auctioneer named a price. It was high, higher than any other slave in the market, paid it without arguing. The energy barrier around the cage dropped. 2 guards rushed forward to bind the woman's hands, but stopped them. "No chains," he said. "I want to see what she does." The woman stood slowly. She was even smaller than had thought. Her head barely reached his chest. She stepped out of the cage and looked around at the guards, the auctioneer, the other slaves watching from their cages. Then she looked at. "You bought me," she said. Her voice was soft. Her galactic common was accented but clear. "I did." "The scanner told you not to." "It did." She nodded once as if she had expected this answer. "My name is Park. You will want to remember that." Grabbed her arm and pulled her close. His claws dug into her skin, drawing blood. She did not cry out. She did not even flinch. "You are property now," he hissed. "You have no name. You have no rights. You will fight in the pits for my amusement, and when you die, I will sell your body for parts." Looked at the blood running down her arm. Then she looked at with those brown, ordinary, terrifying eyes. "Thank you for telling me your plans," she said. "That will make things easier." Threw her toward, "Take her to the cargo hold with the others. We leave within the hour." As dragged her away, the auctioneer approached one last time. "Captain, please, the warnings exist for a reason. The humans, they are not what they appear to be. Their planet, it is a death world. They evolved to survive things that would kill any other species. They are persistent predators. They never stop. They never give up. They will chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. And they form bonds, Captain, bonds with anything, even their enemies. If you keep her long enough, your own crew may start to question their loyalty." Backhanded the auctioneer across the face, sending him sprawling to the floor. "I am," he said. "I have killed warlords and conquered colonies. I have crushed rebellions and broken armies. I do not fear a small, soft creature from a backwater planet." He walked away without looking back. In the cargo hold of the blackened claw, Park sat in the corner of her new cell. Her arm had stopped bleeding already. Human bodies were good at healing. They had to be. Earth had spent 4 billion years trying to kill them. She looked at the other prisoners in the hold. 6 beings from 6 different worlds, all of them broken and afraid. They looked at her with curiosity and fear. The warnings about humans had spread far, even if creatures like refused to believe them. Smiled at them. It was a warm smile, a human smile. The kind of smile that had made wolves into dogs and strangers into friends. "Do not worry," she said. "Everything will be fine." She did not know their names yet. She did not know their stories, but she would learn. And when she did, she would make a plan, because that was what humans did. They watched. They learned. They adapted. And when the time was right, they struck. The blackened claw's engines roared to life. The ship rose from the station and jumped into hyperspace. Park closed her eyes and began to plan. The cargo hold of the blackened claw was cold and dark. Water dripped from pipes in the ceiling. The floor was metal and hard, and the air smelled of oil and old blood. It was not a place meant for living beings. It was a place meant for cargo, and that was exactly what considered his prisoners to be. Park sat in the corner of the cell and watched. She had been watching for 3 days now, watching the guards who came and went, watching the lights that flickered on and off, watching the other prisoners who shared her cage. There were 6 of them in total, 2 merchants who had failed to pay their debts to the wrong people. Their names were and Veen, and they were brothers who had spent their lives trading goods between star systems. Now they traded nothing but whispers and fears. There was a child named Lyra. She was small for her kind, barely a meter tall, with skin and 4 thin arms that she wrapped around herself when she was scared. She had been separated from her family during a raid. She cried sometimes at night and would sit beside her and speak softly until she fell asleep. The other 3 were species did not recognize. One was tall and thin with skin like blue glass. One was covered in brown fur with eyes that glowed in the dark. One had no eyes at all but seemed to see everything anyway. They kept to themselves mostly, but they watched with growing interest. On the first day, had approached her. "You are human," he said. His many eyes blinked nervously. "We have heard stories about your kind." "What kind of stories?" asked. "Stories that make no sense. Stories that say you come from a world that tried to kill you every day for millions of years. Stories that say you can run for hours without stopping. Stories that say your bones grow stronger when they break. Stories that say you tame monsters and make them your friends. Considered this. Some of those stories are exaggerated. And the rest?" She did not answer. On the second day, began to move around the cell. She tested the walls with her hands, feeling for weak points. She studied the bars that separated them from the corridor outside. She listened to the sounds of the ship and learned its rhythms. The engines hummed in a certain way. The air systems clicked at regular intervals. The guards changed shifts every 6 hours. The others watched her but said nothing. On the third day, she began to talk to each of them. She learned their names and their stories. She learned their skills and their fears. And Veen had worked in engineering before they became traders. They knew how ships worked, how to fix them and how to break them. Lyra was small enough to fit through the ventilation shafts that ran throughout the ship. The tall blue one had worked in security once and knew the layout of ships like this one. Filed all of this information away in her mind. Humans were good at that. Their brains had evolved to find patterns, to make plans, to turn information into action. That night came to visit his property. The captain walked into the cargo hold with, and 2 other guards behind him. He stopped in front of the cell and looked at the prisoners inside with yellow, predatory eyes. "The human," he announced. "She will fight in the pits on station. I have already arranged a match against a warrior. The betting will be substantial." He smiled, showing all of his teeth. "The odds against her are 100 to 1. When she dies, I will make a fortune." Stood and walked to the bars. She was so small compared to him, so fragile-looking. Could have crushed her skull with one hand. "Can I ask a question?" she said. Seemed amused. "Speak." "Your species. You are cold-blooded, yes. I noticed you keep the ship warmer than standard." The question surprised him. "Yes, and—" "Nothing, just curious." Stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed and walked away. His guards followed. The cargo hold fell silent again. Moved closer to, "Why did you ask him that?" "Because I needed to know." "Know what?" Looked at the pipes that ran along the ceiling, the pipes that carried heat throughout the ship. I needed to know his weakness. That night, after the lights dimmed and the guards stopped their rounds, gathered the other prisoners around her. She spoke in a whisper, her voice barely louder than the hum of the engines. "I am going to escape this ship. I am going to free all of you and make sure we get to safety, but I cannot do it alone. I need your help." The others looked at each other uncertainly. "How?" Veen asked. "There are 40 guards on the ship. They have weapons. We have nothing." "We have ourselves," said, "and we have knowledge. Veen, you know engineering. Can you access the ship systems through the maintenance tunnels?" The brothers exchanged a look. "Maybe, if we could reach the engineering section without being seen." Lyra turned to the little girl. "The ventilation shafts, you could fit inside them. Could you move through them without being heard?" Lyra's eyes went wide. I think so. I used to play in the vents back home before." Her voice trailed off. "Good," touched her shoulder gently. "You are very brave. I need you to be brave a little longer." She turned to the others. "The rest of you will secure the escape pods. When the time comes, we will all leave together. No one gets left behind. The tall blue one spoke for the first time. And you, what will you do? Looked toward the upper decks. Somewhere up there was sleeping in his quarters, surrounded by his guards, confident in his power. I will keep them busy. The plan took shape over the next 2 days. Explained every detail, made sure everyone understood their role. She drew maps in the dust on the floor, showing the routes they would take, the timing they would need. During the day, she exercised. She did strange movements that the others did not understand, pushing her body up and down with her arms, bending and twisting in ways that looked painful, running in place until sweat poured down her face. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked. "Preparing." "For what?" Stopped moving and looked at the little girl. "On my world, we had a saying, the body must be ready for what the mind decides to do," she smiled. "My mind has decided to do something very difficult, so my body must be ready." On the morning of the 6th day, everything was in place, and Veen had memorized the path to engineering. Lyra had practiced moving silently through the vents. The others knew exactly where the escape pods were located. Stood at the bars of the cell and watched the guards change shifts. She counted the seconds between their rounds. She noted which ones moved slowly and which ones were alert. "Tonight," she said quietly, "at the 3rd hour of the night cycle, that is when their bodies will be at their weakest. That is when we move." Moved beside her. "Are you sure this will work?" "No," admitted, "but humans have a saying for situations like this." "What is it?" She turned and smiled at him. It was not a soft smile. It was the smile of a predator. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. The hours passed slowly. The prisoners rested, saving their strength for what was to come. Lyra curled up beside and fell asleep with her head on the human's lap. Even in her sleep, the little girl's hands gripped her arm, holding on like she was afraid to let go. Stroked her hair gently. On Earth, humans had done this for thousands of years. They had comforted children in the darkness, protected the weak from the strong, formed bonds that lasted lifetimes. Thought humans were soft because they cared about others. He did not understand that caring was what made them dangerous. A human with nothing to protect was unpredictable. A human with someone to protect was unstoppable. Looked at Lyra, at Veen, at all the others who had trusted her with their lives. She had something to protect now. The ship's clock ticked toward the 3rd hour. Closed her eyes and breathed deeply. In a few hours she would either be free or dead. There was no middle ground, no compromise, no surrender. That was fine. Humans did not know how to surrender. They had never learned. It was their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. The clock struck 3. Opened her eyes. It was time. The 3rd hour of the night cycle was the darkest time on the blackened claw. The lights dimmed to save power. The crew slept in their quarters. Only a handful of guards walked the corridors, their eyes heavy and their minds dull. This was the hour Park had chosen. She had not slept. For 3 days she had trained her body to rest in small pieces, napping for minutes at a time so that she could be fully awake when it mattered. This was something humans could do. Their ancestors had done it while hunting across the great plains of Earth, staying alert for days while tracking prey that thought it had escaped. The prey never escaped. Pressed her hand against the cell door and pushed. The lock clicked open, and Veen had spent the last 2 days working on it during the quiet hours, using tools they had hidden in their clothes. The brothers knew machines. They knew how to break them. The door swung open without a sound. Turned to the others. "Remember the plan. Veen, you go to engineering. Cut the power to the heating systems and lock the doors behind you. Lyra, you move through the vents to the security room. Disable the cameras. The rest of you wait 10 minutes, then make your way to the escape pods. I will keep the guards busy." Lyra grabbed her hand. What if something goes wrong? Knelt down and looked into the little girl's eyes. Then you run, you get to the pods and you leave. Do not wait for me. Do not look back. Promise me." Lyra's lower lip trembled, but she nodded, squeezed her hand once, then stood and moved toward the corridor. The first guard was walking away from her, his back turned, his weapon hanging loose at his side. He was with green scales and clawed hands. He was also bored and tired and thinking about his bed. He never heard coming. Humans could move silently when they needed to. They had hunted in forests and grasslands for millions of years, stalking animals that could hear a twig snap from 100 meters away. They had learned to control their breathing, to place their feet just so, to become ghosts in the darkness. His hand closed around the guard's throat from behind. Her other hand grabbed his weapon and pulled it away. The guard tried to scream, but her grip was too tight. Human hands were strong. They had evolved for climbing trees and using tools, for gripping and crushing and never letting go. The guard's struggles grew weaker, then they stopped. Lowered his body to the floor and took his knife. The gun was too loud. She would need to be quiet for as long as possible. She moved deeper into the ship. The second guard was standing at a junction, looking at his communicator. He heard something and turned, but was already there. The knife found the soft spot at the base of his skull, the place where the spine met the brain. He dropped without a sound. The third guard saw her coming. His eyes went wide and he opened his mouth to shout, threw the knife. It spun through the air and buried itself in his throat. He fell backward, hands clutching at the blade, but by then was past him and moving on. She retrieved her knife and kept walking. Somewhere behind her, she heard the ship's lighting flicker, and Veen had reached engineering. The heating systems would shut down soon. The cold would spread through the ship like a slow poison, making the cold-blooded crew sluggish and weak. An alarm began to wail. Someone had found a body. His voice crackled over the intercom, angry and confused. "All hands, the cargo has escaped. Find the human and kill her now." Smiled in the darkness, "Let them come, let them hunt her." They did not understand. They thought they were the hunters. They thought she was the prey. They had it exactly backward. Two came around the corner, weapons raised, scales bright with fear. They saw her standing in the corridor, small and unarmed except for a bloody knife. They hesitated for just a moment, surprised by how harmless she looked. That moment cost them everything. Moved faster than they expected. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They were not the fastest, but they were fast enough and they could react faster than almost anything else. Millions of years of dodging predators had given them reflexes that fired like lightning. She ducked under the first shot and drove her knife into the first guard's knee. He screamed and fell. The second guard swung his weapon toward her, but she was already behind him, her arm wrapped around his neck. She squeezed. Humans could choke. They could also choke others. Their arms were perfectly designed for it, with joints that bent in just the right way and muscles that could maintain pressure for minutes without getting tired. The guard struggled. He was twice her size and 3 times her weight. It did not matter. She held on her grip like iron, her breathing calm and steady. 20 seconds passed, 30, 40. The guard's struggles weakened, then stopped. She dropped him and kept moving. The ship was getting colder now, could feel it in the air, see it in the breath that misted in front of her face. The heating systems were offline. Crew would be feeling it soon. Their movements would slow. Their thoughts would cloud. They had evolved on a warm world under a warm sun. They were not built for the cold. Humans were. Humans had survived ice ages. They had crossed frozen wastelands and climbed frozen mountains. They had hunted in the snow and slept in caves when the world outside was trying to freeze them to death. Cold was uncomfortable for humans. It was deadly. Found a maintenance hatch and pulled herself inside. She moved through the narrow space, following the path she had memorized from the ship's layout. Above her, she could hear running feet and shouting voices. The crew was searching for her. They were panicking. Good, panicked enemies made mistakes. She emerged in a corridor near the officers' quarters. Two more guards stood at the end of the hall, their weapons pointed at the door they were protecting. They did not see her until it was too late. Took them both down in under 5 seconds. A knife to the throat of one, a broken neck for the other. She had learned these techniques on Earth, in training halls where humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing things bigger and stronger than themselves. The door they had been protecting led to the engineering section. Was inside. The lieutenant turned as she entered. He was huge, nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like stone. His eyes burned with anger. "Human," he growled, "you should have stayed in your cage." "Your captain should have read the warning," replied. Charged. He was fast, faster than she expected. His 4 arms reached for her, each one strong enough to crush bone. Dropped low and slid between his legs, her knife slashing at the soft tissue behind his knee as she passed. Roared in pain and stumbled. Was already on her feet, already moving, already behind him. She jumped onto his back and wrapped her arms around his throat. "Your species can hold their breath for 20 minutes, she said calmly. "Mine can only hold it for 2, but you know what humans can do that cannot." Thrashed wildly, trying to throw her off. His arms reached back, clawing at her, but she pressed herself flat against his body where he could not reach. "We can maintain constant pressure. Our muscles do not tire the way yours do. We evolved to run animals to death across open plains. We would chase them for hours, for days, until they collapsed from exhaustion while we kept going." Slammed his back against the wall, trying to crush her. She held on. "Endurance is our birthright." 6 minutes passed. The movements grew weaker. His arms fell to his sides. His eyes rolled back in his head. 7 minutes. Stopped moving. Released him and stepped back. Her arms ached. Her body was bruised. Blood ran from a dozen small cuts where his claws had found her, but she was still standing. And he was not. She looked at the engineering console and smiled. And Veen had done their work well. The heating systems were completely offline, and the doors to the bridge had been sealed. Was trapped with whatever crew remained loyal to him. Checked her wounds. They were painful but not serious. Human bodies were good at surviving damage. They healed fast. They kept functioning even when they should have stopped. She picked up her knife and headed for the bridge. The hunt was almost over. Stood on the bridge of his ship and watched his world fall apart. The security feeds had shown him everything before they went dark. He had watched the human move through his ship like a ghost. He had watched his guards fall one by one, killed by a creature half their size with nothing but a knife in her bare hands. He had watched his strongest warrior choked to death by arms that should have snapped like twigs. Now the feeds were dark. The heating systems were offline. The temperature on the bridge had dropped 15 degrees in the last hour and was still falling. His 4 remaining officers stood around him, their scales dulling as the cold crept into their bodies. "She is just one human," his navigator said. His voice shook. His teeth chattered. "When she comes through that door, we will kill her. There are 5 of us and 1 of her." Did not answer. He was thinking about the warning on his scanner, the warning he had laughed at, the warning he had ignored. "Earthborn, do not engage." He understood now. He understood why the Galactic Council feared the humans. It was not because they were strong or fast or had powerful weapons. It was because they never stopped. They never gave up. They kept coming and coming until their enemies were dead or broken. The humans had a word for it. He had heard it once from a trader who dealt with their kind. Persistence. Humans were persistence predators. On their death world, they had hunted by chasing their prey for hours, for days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion while the humans kept going. They did not need to be faster. They did not need to be stronger. They just needed to be relentless. And Park was relentless. The lights on the bridge flickered and died. Emergency lighting came on, painting everything in shades of red. The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. She is trying to freeze us out, realized. His breath came out as mist. His fingers were growing stiff. We need to take back engineering. We need to restore the heating before we cannot move at all. He moved toward the door, but before he could reach it, the door opened on its own. Park stepped through. She was backlit by the red emergency lights. Her clothes were torn and covered in blood. Most of it was not her own. In one hand she held a broken pipe. In the other she held a length of wire. Her face was calm. Her eyes were steady. She looked at the 5 armed warriors in front of her like they were nothing. Like they were already dead. "Your crew is finished," she said. Her voice was soft but clear. "The other prisoners have secured the escape pods, is dead. You have one chance to surrender and face trial for your crimes." Navigator laughed. It was a nervous sound. "Surrender to you? You are one small human, we are 5 warriors. You cannot possibly think you can beat all of us." Tilted her head. "Your species evolved on a warm world. You need heat to function. Right now your muscles are slowing down, your reactions are getting worse. In another hour you will not be able to move at all." She stepped forward. "I evolved on a world that tried to kill me every day for 4 billion years. Cold is nothing to me. I could stand here all night and wait for you to freeze, but I do not want to wait." She raised her weapons. "So come and try to stop me." The navigator attacked first. He rushed at her with a blade in each hand, his movements fast but clumsy from the cold, and wrapped the wire around his throat in one smooth motion. She pulled. The wire cut deep. The navigator fell, clutching at his neck, gasping for air that would not come. The second officer came at her from the side. He was bigger and stronger, but he was slow, so slow. The cold had stolen his speed, swung the pipe and caught him in the temple. Bone cracked. He dropped like a stone. The third officer tried to grab her from behind. She ducked under his arms, drove her elbow into his stomach, then brought the pipe down on the back of his skull. 1 hit, 2 hits. He stopped moving. The fourth officer was smarter. He hung back, watching, waiting for an opening. But there was no opening. There was only moving through his like water through stones, unstoppable and relentless. When she turned to face him, he ran. She let him go. He would not get far. The ship was sealed. There was nowhere to hide. Now only remained. The captain stood in the center of the bridge, his weapon raised, his body shaking from the cold. His scales had turned pale. His eyes were wide. He looked at the human standing in front of him and finally understood his mistake. He had ignored the warning. "The scanner told me not to engage you," he said. His voice was hoarse. "It told me to stay away, to keep 50 meters between us. I thought it was a joke." It was not a joke. "I thought humans were weak, soft, easy to break." "We are soft, we break easily, but we heal, we adapt, we survive." Stepped closer. "On my world there is a creature called a honey badger. It is small and soft. Lions and leopards can kill it with 1 bite, but they do not. They leave it alone. Do you know why?" Shook his head. "Because the honey badger does not know when to quit. It will fight anything, no matter how big. It will attack lions. It will attack elephants. It will keep fighting until it wins or until it dies. And most predators decide it is not worth the trouble." She was close now, close enough to touch. "Humans are like honey badgers. We are small and soft and easy to hurt. But we do not know when to quit. We do not know how to surrender. We will fight and fight and fight until our enemies are destroyed or until we are dead. And because of that, most species leave us alone." Raised his weapon and fired. The shot hit in the arm. She grunted in pain but did not stop. She did not even slow down. She grabbed his gun hand and twisted. Bones snapped, screamed. The weapon clattered to the floor. Her other hand found his throat. "You should have left me alone," she said. Her fingers tightened. clawed at her arm, but his movements were weak from the cold. He could not break her grip. He could not stop her. "You bought me like property," continued. Her voice was calm, conversational. "You were going to make me fight in the pits until I died. You were going to sell my body for parts." Tried to speak. He could not. Her grip was too tight. "There was a child in that cargo hold. Her name is Lyra. She cried every night because she missed her family. You took her from them. You were going to sell her to someone who would hurt her." Her grip tightened more. "On my world we have a saying. The measure of a person is how they treat those who cannot fight back. You failed that test. You failed it completely." His vision was going dark. His lungs burned for air. His heart pounded in his chest like a drum. "The scanner warned you," whispered. "You should have listened." She squeezed. There was a crunching sound. His body went limp. Park let him fall and stepped back. She looked at her hands covered in blood. She looked at the bodies around her. She felt no guilt. She felt no shame. These beings had chosen their path. They had chosen to prey on the weak, to traffic in suffering, to treat living beings like cargo. They had chosen wrong. The bridge door opened behind her, and Veen stood there, eyes wide with shock. Is it over?" asked. Nodded. "It is over. The ship is ours." What do we do now?" Turned and looked at the navigation console. The ship's computer showed their location, deep in the outer rim, far from any authority that might help them. "Now we take this ship to the nearest galactic authority station. We turn over the surviving crew for trial. We get Lyra back to her family." And then, thought about it. She thought about all the other ships out there, full of slaves and prisoners and people like Lyra who cried at night because they had been taken from everyone they loved. "Then we decide what to do next." She walked off the bridge without looking back. Behind her, his body lay cooling on the floor. The scanner's warning echoed in the silence. "Earthborn, do not engage." He should have listened. The blackened claw arrived at Galactic Authority Station 3 days after the uprising. It was a battered ship full of dead pirates and freed slaves, piloted by a human woman who had killed its captain with her bare hands. The news spread fast. Within hours, every station in the sector knew what had happened. Within days, the story had reached the core worlds. Within weeks, it had become legend. They called her the ghost of the Earthborn hunter, the woman who would not die. Each telling of the story made her a little taller, a little stronger, a little more impossible. In some versions, she had killed 50 pirates. In others, 100. In some versions, she had been shot a dozen times and kept fighting. In others, she had killed just by staring at him until his heart stopped. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. She had simply refused to accept defeat. Park stood before the Galactic Authority Tribunal on the morning of her 4th day at the station. The chamber was large and round, filled with representatives from 100 different species. They sat in tiered rows, looking down at the small human woman in the center of the room. Behind her stood the freed prisoners, and Veen, the brothers who had disabled the ship systems. The tall blue one and the furry one and the eyeless one who had secured the escape pods. And Lyra, the little girl who had crawled through vents in the dark to disable cameras, who had been so brave even though she was so afraid. Lyra held his hand and would not let go. The tribunal leader was a massive being with skin and too many eyes. He looked down with an expression that was hard to read. "Human Park," he said, "you stand before this tribunal accused of multiple counts of homicide. 43 beings died on the blackened claw during your escape. You killed most of them yourself, with nothing but improvised weapons and your bare hands." Said nothing, she simply waited. "You also stand before this tribunal as a hero. The beings you killed were known pirates and slavers. They had murdered thousands. They had trafficked tens of thousands more. The galaxy is better with them gone." He paused. "This tribunal has a question for you. One question before we decide your fate. Ask said, was this level of violence necessary? Could you not have found another way? Thought about the question. She thought about the cargo hold where she had been kept like an animal. She thought about Lyra crying in the dark. She thought about all the beings had bought and sold and broken over the years. I offered surrender, she said. They refused. When someone points a weapon at you and tells you they are going to kill you, you have two choices: die or fight. I chose to fight. But surely you could have. No, her voice was firm. On my world there is a saying, do not start fights, but if someone else starts one, finish it. I did not start that fight. Started it when he bought me, when he planned to make me die for his entertainment. When he tore Lyra from her family, I just finished what he started. The tribunal fell silent. Looked at the representatives from 100 worlds. Some of them looked afraid. Some looked impressed. Some looked at her like she was a wild animal that might attack at any moment. She did not care what they thought of her. She only cared about the beings standing behind her, the beings who had trusted her with their lives. I am not sorry for what I did, she said. I would do it again, 1,000 times, because that is what humans do. We protect the people we care about. We fight for the people who cannot fight for themselves, and we never ever stop. Lyra squeezed her hand. The tribunal leader leaned back in his seat. He conferred with his colleagues for a long moment. Then he turned back to, this tribunal has reached a decision. Park, you are cleared of all charges. The deaths aboard the Blackened Claw are ruled justifiable self-defense and defense of others. Furthermore, for your role in eliminating a dangerous criminal operation and rescuing innocent beings from captivity, the Galactic Authority owes you a debt of gratitude. A murmur ran through the chamber. Name your reward. Had thought about this. She had thought about it during the 3-day journey to the station. She had thought about it while Lyra slept beside her, while and Veen shared stories of their lives before slavery, while the other freed prisoners talked about going home. A ship, she said, a crew who wants to join me, and permission to operate in unrestricted space. To what end? There are more ships like the Blackened Claw out there, more captains like, more cargo holds full of beings who cry themselves to sleep because they have been taken from everyone they love. Her eyes hardened. I am going to find them. I am going to stop them. And I am going to send a message to every slaver in the galaxy. What message? She smiled. It was not a warm smile. That the warnings are real. That Earthborn means danger. That if they ignore the scanner, they will die. The tribunal granted her request. Within a month, Park had her ship. It was a fast corvette that she named the Second Chance. Its crew was small but dedicated, and Veen handled engineering. The tall blue one, whose name was, served as pilot. The furry one and the eyeless one stayed too, though they never explained why. And Lyra stayed. Had tried to send her home, back to her family but the little girl had refused. She said she wanted to stay. She said she wanted to help. She said she wanted to be like. Could not say no. Over the following year, the name Park became known across the galaxy. Slavers fled when they saw her ship coming. Pirates surrendered rather than face her. Criminal empires that had lasted centuries crumbled in months as she tracked them down and destroyed them, one by one. The stories grew. They said she could not be killed. They said she could smell fear. They said she had made a deal with death itself, trading her soul for the power to destroy evil wherever she found it. None of these things were true. The truth was simpler. She was human. She had been born on a death world that had spent billions of years trying to kill her species. She had inherited the gifts of survivors, the strength of those who refused to die, the stubbornness of creatures who had faced extinction and kept going anyway. And she had people to protect. On a quiet night, many months later, sat in the captain's chair of the Second Chance and looked out at the stars. Lyra was asleep in her quarters. The crew was resting. The ship was quiet. The communicator beeped. A transmission was coming in. It was from a station in the outer rim. A slave auction was being held. Beings were being sold like property. Children were being torn from their families. Read the message twice. Then she stood and walked to the helm. "Set course for the outer rim," she told. The pilot looked at her. "The station is heavily defended. They have an army." "I know. They will see us coming." "Good," smiled. "I want them to see. I want them to know that death is coming for them. I want them to check their scanners and see the warning and know that it is already too late." Nodded and entered the coordinates. The ship turned toward the outer rim. Somewhere on that station, a slaver would look at his scanner and see the same warning that had seen. "Earthborn, do not engage." Some would listen. They would run. They would hide. They would pray to whatever gods they believed in that the human would pass them by. Some would not listen. They would laugh just like had laughed. They would think they were safe. They would think the warning was a joke. They would be wrong. Park looked out at the stars and smiled. The hunt was not over. It was just beginning.